All right, everyone, part 2 of my downward spiral into alcohol addiction. This is going to cover the 2 years that I decided to go to grad school. I left Central Illinois and I moved up to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I went to Marquette University for 2 years of grad school. I enrolled in a business-related program. A lot of people in the program were actually students who were already working full-time. They had jobs and families. A handful of us were there as full-time students. I was awarded a graduate assistantship my second year, not my first. Number one, the thing that sticks out to me most, something I just mentioned, a lot of the students who I was in class with had lives that were structured already. They had families, they had careers, they were going to school on a part-time basis. So it's not like undergraduate where you go to a new school and you are thrown in with a bunch of other people who are looking to make friends. There was a lot of loneliness there for me at that time, even though I wasn't unhappy or a lonely guy. You don't make the number of friends that you do when you're younger, when you go into high school or you go into college where everybody's looking to make friends. When I look at my Facebook, I was thinking about this, and I look at my Facebook, and out of the 11 to 1,200 people who I'm friends with on social media, I think there are only 4 on there who I met when I was at Marquette. And those are 4 amazing, wonderful people who I love dearly, and I'm glad I know in this life. But you would think somebody who was 23 years old and was a relatively social guy would have made more friends. Well, I didn't. I did have a few people up there who were friends of mine from high school, one who I was really pretty good friends with, and she introduced me to a few people, her roommates and things like that. But by and large, I did not establish the social network that I did when I was younger, like going into college. So what this led to was, because I had a deep affinity for loving the drink, is I started drinking alone frequently. It was not uncommon for me on Saturday afternoon to walk across the street from my apartment. I had an apartment on campus. Marquette did have a couple of buildings where they had apartments that were designated for law, dental, and graduate students. And so moving up to Milwaukee, not knowing the lay of the land, I just grabbed one of those and it was fine for me. But there was this campus bar called Haggerty's. Some people, if you're familiar with Marquette in that day, you would recognize the name. It was kind of across the road from my apartment. And on Saturday afternoon, if I had reading or something to do, I would literally go over there. I would order a pitcher of Miller Lite, 1 glass. I would go sit in a booth. I would do my reading or whatever I had to do for class, and the pitcher would be gone and I'd be feeling a little loose. So I would be done with my work for the day. I would go up to the bar. I would order another pitcher, and I would sit there and drink it all by myself while I struck up a random conversation with some old guy who was sitting down the bar or whatever. It happened many more times than once. And then, I would go back over to my apartment. I'd go to sleep / pass out, and that would be it for me. So this was a habit that I was starting. Another thing I would do Thursday nights, they had a convenience store not too far from my apartment called Open Pantry. And I would go there on Thursday night. I would get done with class, and Thursday night was kind of like my laundry night. I would go there and I would grab a 6-pack of Miller Lite, and I would sit there in the evening in my apartment and I would do laundry. And I remember the TV lineup on Thursday nights. They had Friends and some other sitcoms that were pretty popular, and then it would end up with ER, which was a very popular show at the time. A lot of you might remember. But I would drink the whole 6-pack by myself like this was normal, and I would do my laundry. My first year there, I did have an internship at a credit union in a suburb called West Allis. And that actually kept me structured enough to where during the week I would have to shut the drinking off. So it provided something that I had to do, go show up at, that I couldn't be drinking at, obviously. And it would cause me to choose not to drink the night before because I wanted to feel good at work. And then I would have classes in the evening and stuff like that. Where I really would start to notice the real problematic stuff, it started in my second year. I was awarded a graduate assistantship going into the second year. I was assigned to the Associate Dean of the College of Communication. Mike Price was his name. He is a prince of a man. Mike was wonderful, but Mike was not really a research guy, so he didn't have research things for me to help with. He was big into the theater department. I think he used to chair it at one point. And so he just had me work in the box office at the campus theater. So I was working on campus. It was a hell of a great way to pay for school and get some extra money on the side. There was a lot of flexibility. So the drinking alone continued. Some weekends I would shoot down to Chicago where I had some friends from college, or my old college roommate would come up and we'd go out to some bars in Milwaukee, which was just, like all day and all night drinking on the weekends. And then I really started to notice a few things over the Christmas break. My second year there, I had to work for the theater department. They had a deal where they put on a show for the local grade schools and they'd bus kids in and everything like that. And I had to be up there for most of Christmas break working that. But what I did was I noticed this habit I was getting into, to where I would wake up, I would work out, I would go to my duties with the theater department, and I would go back, I'd stop at that, I'd run over to that open pantry, and then I'd, get a 12-pack, and I'd go back to my apartment, play video games, and just kill time. And before I knew it, that 12-pack would be gone. And then that went on for a few days, for about a week there, and I started looking around and I'm like, look at all these empty beer cans and look at the garbage, and I'm drinking a 12-pack a day. I had this cycle where it was just get up, work out, go work, come back, drink your 12-pack, and, repeat the same cycle the next day. So that happened. Yeah. I was really, really kind of losing touch with myself. I got to a point where I had enough of these binge experiences drinking alone to where that spring I decided I was going to quit drinking for Lent. Of course, being good Catholic, we give up things for Lent, right? Well, I gave up drinking, and I really didn't do it to fulfill my Lenten obligation so much as I wanted to see if I could actually give up drinking for 40 days, 6 weeks, whatever it was. And guess what? I did. So that's great, but at the same time, it was kind of like a permission slip. It made me think, oh yeah, see, I don't have a problem. But when in fact, I did. And the mere fact that I chose to try to quit drinking for Lent should signal something right there. I would tell you that that point in my life when I went up there, I was open to any possibility, any direction that my life might take. Toward the end of my time there, I started getting this gut feeling I just wanted to come back to Springfield and kind of reset, where I'm from. I wasn't necessarily thinking I would stay in Springfield, but something in my gut was kind of pulling me back here. I really think it was God working in my life, because I have said in other places, to make the recovery and the turnaround that I did, I needed to be here. I really think that pull was something that was happening at a divine level at that early age. So yeah, there was a lot of loneliness there. I did not make a lot of friends. I will comment on one thing when it comes to, relationships. That a lot of people look for at that age, or even when they're single in adult life. I always thought that maybe I would meet some nice girl and that would cause me to kind of calm down on the drinking. So the way I'll explain that is, when I was in college and grad school, there were several girls who I dated. It was single a lot though. I was never the type that had to have somebody else. I didn't have to be in a relationship. I never left one for somebody else. I always, if I let a relationship cool off, it was just to go back to me and my partying habits. But I have had this conversation with my wife, and I tell her that she was not necessarily the first person who was seemingly perfect who I met, that after a week or two, it was wow, this could have some long-term potential. She's the first one that the universe did not let me run away from. And I'll get to that in the next video, because I tried to run like hell from her after a couple weeks. But yeah, I won't go into who or how many, but there were people who came along, and it's like after a week, now God knows what would have happened, but after like a week or two, it's like, oh wow, if the train leaves the station with this one, it might not stop. And I would back off from that immediately. And I would have told you back then it was because I wasn't ready, and I wasn't, but the reason I wasn't ready was because I did not want to give up the party alcohol lifestyle that I had at that point. When you put booze or other substances on a pedestal, you are not grounded and present enough in where you are to see things that are right in front of you. And although people at that age say they're open to long-term prospects or finding more meaningful, deeper relationships with people, they think they are, but in my case, it's like, no, you weren't, you couldn't handle it. Booze was the priority. And because of that, the more real I thought something could get, the quicker I was the hell out of there. Like I said, until I met my wife, and I tried to do that with her, but the universe had other plans, and I'll explain that in number 3. But the moral of that story is you're not going to be able to connect with people the way that you can if alcohol is not a priority in your life. So yeah, the major red flags that I could see there were drinking alone, the loneliness, and the binge drinking alone. That was really problematic. That was not normal. I got through graduation, and then I did come back to Springfield. I landed my first job, which gave me some structure back. So I kind of got my crap back together for a while, which will be video number 3. All right, love you all, and hope you're having a great one. Bye-bye.